Hey guys, this is Joe Harper with Reformed Truther Ministries. The topic of today's video is the roundtable groups. Now, for those of you who do not know, the roundtable groups are a network of globalist political organizations that are dedicated to the task of consolidating political power and ultimately bringing the world together under the banner of the New World Order. Roundtable groups such as the Council on Foreign Relations, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, known as Chatham House, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderberg Group are all organizations that have exercised incredible political and economic influence on the world scene throughout the 20th and the 21st centuries. Members of these groups have included political elites, U.S. presidents and UK prime ministers, international banksters, captains of industries, media moguls, and many other famous and prominent men and women in society throughout the West. Their numbers have included U.S. presidents such as Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton, UK prime ministers such as David Cameron, Tony Blair, heads of the Federal Reserve such as Alan Greenspan, and other political elites such as Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller, amongst many others. When one understands the history of the roundtable groups, then one begins to understand how the secret societies and the world elites have been able to tighten their political grip over the world, especially in modern times. When one understands the political history of the United States and Western Europe in the 20th century and the 21st century, you understand that these groups have been an engine of consolidating control over the political establishment in nations across the world, how they've been able to consolidate economic control over an increasingly smaller number of corporations and companies under their control, how they've been able to really morph the U.S. economy into the military-industrial complex. And as they've engineered wars and revolutions across the world, they have used all these things to increase their power as they continue toward their ultimate objective of unifying the world under a single government, which we know to be the New World Order. The origins of the roundtable groups goes back to a man by the name of Cecil Rhodes. Cecil Rhodes was a British mining baron from South Africa who made his fortunes from the diamonds that were found in his mines in South Africa. Rhodes was also a politician and a zealot advocate for British imperialism. He was a true believer in the British Empire, and he saw the British Empire as an instrument for his greater plans and hopes for world domination. Rhodes, during his life, dreamed of the British Empire stretching across Africa as across the rest of the world, and he believed that the British colonies should stretch from Egypt in the north all the way across Africa to the Cape of Good Hope in the south. And he worked intensively throughout his life to bring about this dream into a reality. And when one understands Cecil Rhodes, you understand that there was much more to him than simply his vast wealth and his British imperialist fervor, but that Rhodes was also a Freemason and a member of the highly secretive Illuminati. Rhodes, as a member of the secret societies, planned to use the vast British Empire as a tool to achieve the ancient plans of world domination set down by the secret societies, or in other words, to build the New World Order. In order to achieve this goal, the plan that Rhodes set out was to create a secret society that would build up a series of political networks across the English-speaking world. These networks over time became known as the Roundtable Groups. The initial secret society that Rhodes established was inspired by the infamous Jesuit order, which is the most powerful of all of the secret societies in the world. When Rhodes died, he left his vast fortune for the creation of this secret society and the series of political networks known as the Roundtable Groups. A prominent portion of how that fortune got used was the creation of the Rhodes Scholarship, which is still a prominent scholarship at Oxford University this very day, and it has been used to groom up-and-coming politicians before they're entered into the political establishment. A famous example of this is future President Bill Clinton was a notable Rhodes Scholar. So Cecil Rhodes left his fortune for the creation of the roundtable groups, and the first roundtable group that was established in Great Britain became known over time as the Royal Institute of International Affairs. The main roundtable group founded in Great Britain by Cecil Rhodes and his associates was the Royal Institute of International Affairs, today more commonly known as Chatham House. The Royal Institute of International Affairs, before it was officially founded in 1920, was known as the Milner Group or Milner's Kindergarten, named after Lord Alfred Milner, a prominent British leader, politician, and a close associate of Cecil Rhodes. The group was powerful within British politics in the era surrounding World War I, and as a result, the secret society was dominant over the British delegation at the Versailles Conference in 1919 at the end of World War I. As a result of this incredible influence that they had over the British delegation at the signing of the treaty, they had a considerable impact on the drafting of the finer points of the Versailles Treaty, which amounted to nothing less than the redrawing of the map of Europe, the disintegration of the German and Austrian empires, and the borders of Eastern Europe changing drastically, all due to their influence and control over the events of history through that prominent treaty. In the United States, a similar group would eventually be established, a sister group, as it were, to the Royal Institute of International Affairs, and the American equivalent to Chatham House would be known as the Council on Foreign Relations. Its founding leaders included Colonel Edward Mandell House, a prominent advisor to Woodrow Wilson, W. Averell Harriman, John D. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, and Paul Warburg, amongst many others. These powerful business and political leaders in the United States were the very same men who worked hard to establish the Federal Reserve System in the United States, the privately owned central bank that lends money to the government at interest, which creates a system of debt slavery, enriching a small elite over the nation at the detriment of the greater masses. The Council on Foreign Relations, or often known as the CFR, has operated virtually as the shadow government in the United States ever since the administration of Woodrow Wilson. This shadow government is often called by conservatives and conspiracy theorists as the deep state. The members of the CFR have been in virtually every single American administration since Woodrow Wilson. One of their greatest achievements was during the administration of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. At the end of World War II, their members were instrumental in every aspect of the founding of the United Nations. The people who pushed for the creation of that group were all in the American delegation, were all members of the Council on Foreign Relations. And they have gone on to have influences in every single post-war administration since World War II, and they have worked closely with the help of other groups to promote an ever-increasing agenda of globalization in the United States, Western Europe, and across the globe. In 1973, another roundtable group called the Trilateral Commission was founded by Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller. This group is smaller and even more elite than the Council on Foreign Relations. While the membership of the CFR is ranked in the thousands, the Trilateral Commission has a membership of only a few hundred members, although the membership of the two groups often overlap. The group was founded as a gathering of leaders from North America, Western Europe, and Japan with the hope of promoting greater globalization, political and economic cooperation across the world, at least officially. But in secret, it has always been a hub for promoting the New World Order and the greater agenda of building a single world government. U.S. Presidents George Herbert Walker Bush and Bill Clinton are both confirmed members of the Trilateral Commission. It is no secret to historians and researchers that the Trilateral Commission has always been working towards globalization, which has always been simply a more acceptable term for the building of the New World Order. But even after the Trilateral Commission, there is a third group that is even more elite than both the CFR and the Trilateral Commission. And this group is the most elite one of them all, known as the Bilderberg Group. This elite organization is an annual meeting of European royalty, politicians from across the West, business moguls, and prominent members of the media. This group was named after the Bilderberg Hotel, which was the location of the first summit, which met in 1954. The group was founded in 1954 by a notable Polish Roman Catholic politician named Joseph Redinger, with close connections to the Vatican and also a membership within the Freemasons. After World War II, the Bilderberg Group worked hard for the unification of a greater Europe, which led to a number of European policies, including the creation of the European Common Market, the signing of the Treaty of Rome within the Vatican, the creation of the European Union, the European Parliament, and even the European currency. The group knew that the unification of Europe was a necessary step for the greater unification of the world. They still have hopes to bring about similar aims in North America, Asia, Africa, and other portions of the world. And this group is composed of only about 100 members each and every year. The reason why this group gets such little attention in the media and almost never any negative press on it is because all of the prominent members of the corporate media are brought into within the ranks of this organization so that no negative press is ever released to the greater masses. Many other groups could be discussed, such as Skull and Bones, located at Yale University, which has included U.S. presidents such as William Taft, George Herbert Walker Bush, and George W. Bush. The Bohemian Club could be mentioned in the California Redwoods surrounding San Francisco, where occult rituals have taken place, such as the cremation of care ceremony, famously caught on video, or other groups such as the Committee of 300 and the Club of Rome, which have been committed to the agendas of depopulation. But these groups will have to be discussed in more detail in another video. Knowledge of the roundtable groups is important for understanding the world, because what it shows us is that the political system is so different than what we've often been told. The elites want us to get sucked into the system in the United States of Republicans and Democrats. But once you understand the roundtable groups and the other secret societies that are standing behind these more political networks, you understand that the corruption goes deeper than simply one party or one side of the spectrum. Now, as Christians, we'll always be, in terms of our views themselves, we'll always be conservative, because the conservative side of the spectrum is in line with a biblical worldview versus the secular Marxist agenda that is promoted by the left. But this doesn't mean that we have to be sucked into, quote, the Republican Party, and we cannot understand the corruption that runs so much deeper than what we are often told or what we are led to believe. The history of the roundtable group show us that the political system has gotten to a point in the United States where it is completely and totally corrupt. And the entire political system in this country and in countries across the world is controlled by a number of elites that have been initiated into a number of different secret societies. This is a complex web that it's not simply a single line of one organization above another, but it is a highly integrated system of groups and organizations that all relate to each other. At the top of the pyramid, as it were, is the more secretive occult groups that stand behind these more outward political groups. And ultimately, the two groups that are at the pinnacle of power are the Illuminati and the Jesuits, with the Jesuits being in control of the Illuminati and all the other secret societies and political globalist organizations. Bible prophecy tells us that Mystery Babylon, centered in the Vatican with the Pope of Rome, is the center of the entire world political system known as the Antichrist system. This is described in detail in Revelation chapter 17 and Revelation chapter 18. But as Christians, what is important for us to understand is that when we see this system, when we see this network of groups, when we see the amount of political control over this world, we realize that this world is not our home. We realize that we are living in a system that is largely, at this point in history, is controlled by our ultimate spiritual enemy, which is Satan, or the devil. Scripture calls him by many names, such as the prince of the power of the air and the prince of this world. And we see that the system of the nations that he has deceived, that he is in control of their political leadership, and that we are living in a matrix of control that is not biblical, but is certainly anti-God, anti-Christian, anti-Jesus, anti-biblical. And as Christians, we need to understand that our warfare is spiritual, and that God will be the one to bring down this evil occult system that reigns over the political world, and that we need to not get sucked in and deceived by this matrix of politics, but that we need to understand, because of the fact that our warfare is spiritual, is through the means of our spiritual weapons of prayer, fasting, and the proper use of the Word of God, the proper preaching of the gospel, that we will ultimately see this world system controlled by our ultimate enemy, the devil, defeated. So we must understand that as Christians, we'll always have to use wisdom and discernment in how we interact with the political system. There's obviously some liberty in regards to how we interact with voting and things of that nature within good reason. But even though we have a certain amount of liberty, we must have wisdom and discernment and not be sucked into this political vortex that has led so many astray, even true believers. And understanding this world system gives us greater discernment and understanding for the world at large. So as I always say, guys, studying this history, studying roundtable groups, seeing how they've influenced events such as the World War I, the Versailles Treaty, the creation of the United Nations, the Federal Reserve System, the integration of Western Europe, and the continued push for globalization that's going on even in our day. When you understand these things, you really see our modern history, especially post-World War II history, in its proper perspective. And you see the trajectory that the world's going on. So studying these things is very important. It does give us greater wisdom and discernment for understanding the world. So as I always say, guys, look at these things, study these things, give them proper consideration, because understanding the roundtable groups really gives us an understanding of how the world is operating that we are living in. And that allows us to be like the men of Issachar, who understood the times that they lived in and knew what to do in regards to serving the Lord. So all these things being said, guys, this is Joe Harper with Reformed Truther Ministries. God bless.